When I started my coaching business, I had no idea how to take sales calls. I didn't know what to say and I didn't know how to overcome any objections at all, and I didn't even use a sales script. I mean, I was lucky that anyone wanted to buy from me. But now I have personally taken over 1,319 sales calls and paid thousands and thousands of dollars for sales coaching. So in this video, I want to go over my 5-step sales script that I personally use to go from being someone that rarely made any sales, even though I was only charging like $800 for my coaching offer, which is insanely cheap for what I was offering, and to raising the price all the way up to $3,000 and still raising the conversion rate significantly at the same time. And learning this was one of the biggest contributors to me making somewhere between $20,000 to $30,000 a month in revenue consistently, and sometimes even upwards of $40,000 in a single month. So without further ado, let's get into the script and let me show you what I learned from all of this. The first phase in our sales call is the call introduction. We begin that by getting people on our Zoom call or whatever you're using. You can also use Google Meet or even the regular phone. And then we do a little bit of small talk. And the reason we do that is because we want to show that we are also just humans. And the prospect knows when they get on the call that this is a sales call and you are a salesman. So they have their guards up a little bit from the beginning. So we want to show that this is just casual, that we aren't just a machine that's supposed to take their credit card. So by doing a little bit of small talk and making things more casual, you let their guards down a little bit. And most people actually spend a couple of minutes doing that, talking about the weather or something in the background of the Zoom call or something like that. But to be honest, I'm not that into small talk, so I usually keep it very short and sweet. Maybe I spend like 30 seconds or maybe a minute on commenting on something in the background, talking about the weather or asking them where they are from. And then after that, I just move on with the call. And that has worked very well for me. And then the next step in this phase is to frame the call. And this is so important because this is where we set expectations and show the prospect what is going to happen on this call. Sometimes they had other expectations of what the call is going to be about. And some people might be there for the wrong reasons. And then you can weed those people out and not spend a whole sales call on someone that's not going to buy anyway. But that's usually a very small percentage. So the big reason why we do this is because we want to take control over the call. We want to be the dominant part in this conversation, because if we don't show authority in the call, then we aren't gonna make the sale. I haven't tried a single sales call where I lost like the authority and the control of the call and let the prospect ask the questions and take the control, where I actually still made the sale. So it's so crucial that you take control and set expectations with the prospect. So you want to do that really quickly before the prospect starts asking questions. And if they start asking questions, then you want to quickly just overrule their question and get into framing the call. Because as soon as you start answering questions, then you have lost control over the call. And then after that, what I usually do is I ask people if they actually watched my free training. And this free training is what is typically booking me all of the calls, but sometimes the prospect haven't watched the video, or maybe they only watched like 10 minutes of it. And if they haven't watched it, I always consider rescheduling the call, because every time they haven't watched the video, pretty much always get some objection that the VSL could have handled. And trust me, I have lost so many sales because I just ended up taking the call anyway. So after experiencing that, I just ended up always rescheduling if they haven't watched it or only watched a bit of the video. And then it's time for phase number 2, which is the discovery phase. And this is the most important and one of the biggest phases of them all. And the goal with this is to establish their current situation and their desired situation. And most importantly, the gap between these two. Because we want to figure out, can we actually help them bridge that gap? And the reason we also want to establish the gap is because if the prospect don't feel like there is a gap and it's hard to achieve this and that they can't achieve this by themselves, then you probably won't make the sale, because why would they pay someone to fix a problem that they feel like they can handle themselves? So you run the prospect through this process for 2 reasons. 1, we want to know if we can actually help them. And 2, if this is not top of mind for the prospect, then you won't make the sale, because the prospect probably kind of know what the problem is and what they want to achieve, but oftentimes they haven't really thought it all through and figure out what the core problem is and what they want to achieve They just know that something is wrong. So by talking the prospect through this and making them feel the pain of having this problem and not being able to solve it by themselves, and making them aware that, all right, I actually need help with this. I didn't know that it was so hard for me and that it meant so much to me. I haven't really thought that all through. And making the prospect really feel that and making them aware of it is so important, because if you don't do that, then all they're going to think about once you pitch the product is, how much does it cost? How much does that hurt their economy? And of course, that makes it so much harder to sell. But by making this all top of mind and making them really feel the pain, you make them think, yeah, I know it costs this amount of money, but it brings me a lot of value, and I know this means a lot to me, and I need help with this, and I can't do this on my own. So this is probably worth the money, at least if this product is the right fit for the customer. Because of course, sometimes it just isn't the right fit, and the problem isn't big enough for them to pay the amount of money and stuff like that. And then it's just not meant to be. Then we shouldn't sell them the product. But if it is the right fit, which it should be most of the time if you did your marketing correctly, then they should feel like, yes, this is a lot of money, but it's definitely worth it, because yeah, this really hurts not being able to solve this problem. All right. So the questions I typically ask in this phase is, why did you book the call? What motivated them to actually book the call in the first place? What problem do they have? And typically when I ask them about the problem, they oftentimes give me some very surface level answer. So maybe they tell me like, yeah, the problem is that I don't really know how to build my YouTube channel for my business and get leads. That's not really a problem, that's actually the solution. So it's my job as a closer to dig deeper and figure out what is the actual problem. So maybe I would ask them, all right, so you want to build a YouTube channel. Why do we want to build a YouTube channel? Well, they aren't getting that many leads, and they aren't making the amount of money that they want to make in their business. And they heard through the VSL that I made that using YouTube is a really good way of generating more leads. So the real problem is actually that they need more leads for the business. And then you want to dive into their current situation and learn more about them and figure out what kind of business do they run. Are they the sole owner, or do they actually have to make the decision with someone else? Really important in terms of not getting the objection of, I need to talk to my partner. You also need to ask relevant questions in terms of the problem that they just told you. So if the problem is that they need more leads, then you want to figure out how many leads are they currently getting, and how much revenue do they make from that, and how much profit do they drive from that revenue. And then you of course want to dig deep into the feelings behind it all, and kind of let them tell you that they aren't satisfied with their current situation. So if they aren't getting that many leads and they aren't getting the sales that they want, then you want to ask them, what does this mean? If you aren't making enough sales and you keep making the same amount of sales that you do right now, what does that mean for you? Do you have to close down your business? Do you just continue? Are you going to have to work 24/7 and you can't even spend time with your family and stuff like that? What problems does that actually create for them? And by digging deep in this, you create this pain in the prospect that really makes them want to solve it. They want to actually take action and solve the problem, all right? So it's super important that you wake those feelings in them and make them really aware that this is actually a problem that they want to solve. Because again, they might kind of know, but they might not really realize the depth of this problem, all right? And then of course we want to move on and establish the dream scenario. What do they actually want to achieve? So in this case, we want to figure out how many leads do they want to generate, how much revenue do they want to make, and how much profit do they want to make from that. And again, you also want to dig deep into, what does this actually enable them to do? Does this enable them to work less, hire some people that can take some of the workload from them so they can spend more time with the family? Or maybe by reaching this goal, they don't have to shut down their business and get a normal job and stuff like that. And again, you do this by really making them feel the problem and also feel like the relief of actually solving the problem, which is also really important. And as I told you earlier, that's all about building that gap between their current situation and their desired destination. And then we want to establish some doubt, because if they feel like they can solve this by themselves, then why should they pay you to solve it? So now you want to ask them, have you tried to solve this before? What have you tried? And have you tried buying some help before that didn't work for you? Because obviously we don't want to pitch the same solution that they have tried and failed with before. And if they already tried the solution that you want to pitch them, then you want to dig deep and figure out, did they actually do it correctly? Because if it turns out that they already tried it and failed with it, and that it's just because they didn't do it correctly, then of course you can just pitch the same thing and just make them aware that they didn't do it correctly, right? And then I actually also just asked them, do you feel like you can reach this goal on your own, or do you feel like you need help with this? Because sometimes they actually feel like they can do this on their own. And if they say that, yeah, I can probably do this by myself, then my reply always is, great, that's awesome. A lot of my clients actually said the same thing. The reason why they chose to work with us is because they want to achieve it much, much faster. Is that also the case for you? Because then the prospect feel like they actually took a step away from the sale, but you actually turn it all around and move them closer to the sale instead. So that's a really good hack. And most of the times people are like, yeah, I definitely need help with that. And by getting them to say that out loud, then you prevent them from giving you the objection later on where they say like, yeah, Jacob, this all sounds good, but maybe I should just try this out myself. And then if it doesn't work, then I can always come and buy from you. Because once they said it out loud, they won't say something completely different later on in the call, because they always want to say something that's congruent to what they said earlier. That's just part of human nature. So it's a really, really cool trick to prevent them from giving you that objection later on. And then it's time for phase number 3, which is the transition. And it's called the transition because it's the transition between the discovery phase and the pitch. And we have this transition because we don't want to just go straight ahead and pitch the product, because we want to kind of ease into it. And by doing that, we get less resistance from the prospect, all right? So the first thing I do here is I say, all right, so I think I got all the answers I need, so I don't really have any more questions. Do you feel like there's anything else we need to go through? And by asking that, you give them the option to tell you if there's something really important that they want us to go through. And this is important because if they feel like we are missing something, then they feel less understood. And to make the sale, we really need to make them feel understood and gain their trust. And then we move on and say, all right, so where do you want to go from here? I can go through the program with you, and I definitely also have some thoughts based on what you just shared with me that I want to share with you. And the reason why we say this is because we give them the ball and we kind of give them the feeling that they have the control. But in reality, the natural response to that is basically just to throw back the ball to you. So basically, you still have control even though you give them that feeling. And by doing this, you get permission to continue into the pitch, and you get so much less resistance for the rest of the process. So it's really, really important. So it's basically another way to ask them if it's okay to move into the pitch. And that leads us to the next part of the transition, where we basically tell them that whether or not we choose to work together, these 3 things are what I feel like you need to do to solve your problem. And then afterwards, we get them to agree with that. So here we need to list 3 specific things that they need to do to get more leads in their business with YouTube, for example. And the reason why we choose 3 things is to make it simple and make them feel like it's achievable. And the reason why we mention these things is to get full alignment on the process before we even pitch them something. So once we move to the pitch, we pretty much have full alignment on the process. Then we can pitch them the exact solution to those 3 things that they already told you that they agree on. So once we've gone through these 3 actionables, then we do a double tie down, which means that we ask them, do you agree? And once they said yes, we ask them, what are your thoughts on that? And then you basically force them to reflect more on it and actually tell you what they really think about it. So once you have full alignment on this, then you can move on to the next question. And this is where we ask them, do you want to know how we can help you with that? And then they pretty much always respond really quickly and sound very excited to know the answer to how you can help them. And then, of course, you make it very clear that you can actually help them with this. And if you don't make it very clear and say out loud that, yes, we can actually help you, then the prospect will always have that doubt in their mind and think like, can he actually help me? So it's really important that you make it very clear and say it very clearly that, yes, I can actually help you with this. And then it's time for phase number 4, the pitch. And the biggest mistake a lot of people make here is that they start blabbering about the deliveries. So they tell the prospect that they get this course and they get access to a Facebook group and blah, 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 blah. And the prospect doesn't care about that. They're not buying a course or a service, they are buying a solution to a specific problem, okay? For example, if you're selling Facebook ads, the prospect doesn't care if you're doing Facebook ads or SEO or whatever you're doing. They just care that they get more customers and more leads, all right? So you want to say something like, basically what we do is we take people from their current situation, which is what they just told you, to their desired situation, which is again, what they told you, and then we move on and say, and we do that by doing these 3 things. And here you basically mention 3 things and make them align with the 3 actionables that you mentioned earlier and got full alignment on. So you already know beforehand that the pitch works because they already said, yes, that's what I want. And only then, after you've done that, then you could break down how you actually deliver it. Because of course they want to know what they actually get access to and how it works. Because otherwise, once you are starting the onboarding, they will ask you a bunch of questions and be like, all right, so how does it work? Do I get access to an online course or Facebook group, or how does it actually work? So you want to break down that doubt and tell them exactly what's going to happen. So that's pretty much everything there is to the pitch. It's super simple and simplicity always works the best. So by doing it this way, it should make it very clear to the prospect what this is all about and how you can help them. And then after that, we move into the close or the commitment phase. And we start that by saying, so, what questions do you have? And it's really important that we say it in a way where we expect them to have questions. Because if you say, do you have any questions? Then they will most likely say, nope. And that's even though they might actually still have questions. They just haven't processed all of the information that you just gave them, so they just need a little bit of time. So by saying it in a way where you make it clear that you expect them to have questions, then they feel like they should come up with some questions. And the reason we do this is because we want them to really internalize what we just pitched them. So we actually drag out the time and give them time to process the pitch and give them time to actually make a decision, really. And that's really helpful for avoiding uncertainty-based objections. And we basically keep fishing for questions until they ask themselves for the price, because that's when they actually are ready to move on and make a decision. So once they ask that question, you say, sure, that's a really great question, and I want to go through that with you in a moment, but first I want to be completely sure that you feel like this is the right thing for you, because I know that me and my team are really committed to delivering the best service for you and really help you with solving this problem. So I want to make sure that you feel like this is the right thing for you. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 is this is exactly what I need, and 1 is I really hate this guy, I just want to get off the call. Where on this scale do you stand? And you want to say it in kind of a funny way where you kind of lighten the mood on the call, because at this time of the call, we are at the point where we can get the most amount of resistance. So we want to make sure that they really have their guards down and answer your questions very honestly. And then if they say 8 or above, then that's really cool. Then they are pretty aligned and they feel like this is the right thing for them. But if they say anything below 8, then we are pretty sure that they have some kind of objection and they don't really feel like this is the right thing for them. So if that's the case, then we want to dig deep and try to figure out what are they unsure about? Where is the problem? What makes them feel like they aren't really sure that this is the right thing for them? So you want to say something like, thank you for your honesty. I feel like there's always uncertainty in a decision like this, but I feel like when you're on a 7 or 6 or whatever they say, that means that you aren't really sure that this is right for you and that you feel like something is missing. So what do you feel like is missing to get you closer to a 10? What do you need more clarity on? And then again, you keep digging until they give you the real objection, because then you can handle that before you tell them the price, because that's way easier than handling the objection after you told the price. So you want to keep doing that and keep taking the temperature until they are an 8 or above, because once you've done that, you are pretty sure that they don't have any objections left. And then after that, you move on and give them clarity on exactly what happens next, because the prospect is always afraid of the unknown, so they don't really know what's going to happen next. So you want to make sure that they understand that what's going to happen next is that we process the payment, we give you access to the online portal, and we go through it with you so you understand exactly what happens. We show you how you book calls with Jacob, and we give you access to the Facebook group. They know exactly what's going to happen. And then they feel more comfortable with making a decision and actually going through with the purchase. And then you just shut up. And this is so crucial that you don't start blabbering, because this is a huge mistake that a lot of people do. They start talking because there's a lot of silence at this point. And the reason why there's silence is because the prospect are thinking everything through. They are trying to make a decision. So if you start blabbering here, then you disturb them and then they can't really make a decision. And then what's going to happen is that they feel like they can't make a decision on the call. And then they start saying things like, I need to think about it. So it's so important that you just get comfortable with that silence and just wait until they talk, even though it might take a long time. Because if you start talking, then you lose the sale. And then one of two things can happen. Either they say, all right, let's do it, which is of course the ideal situation. And if you did everything right and really did things correctly in the discovery phase, then you will most likely not get that many objections. But in some cases, and you can't really avoid it completely, you will get objections. So the last phase, which is phase number 6, is the objection handling phase. And I'm not going to go that much into that because I could probably make a full video about that in itself. So you want to figure out, is it actually an objection or are they just complaining and they still want to buy? If it's still an objection, then you want to figure out what is the right objection. What is the actual problem that leads them to not want to buy right now? Because oftentimes they will say something and it's basically just a smoke screen. It's not really the real reason why they are not ready to buy. So oftentimes they will say things like, I don't have the money, the timing is not right because XYZ, I need to talk with my spouse, and all sorts of stuff like that. If they say that, you need to figure out, is that the right reason or is it actually something else? And only after you're 100% sure that you found the right objection, then you can start handling it. So an example of that could be that you found out that they actually don't have the money right now, but in a week or so they get their salary and then they can afford the full program. So in that case, you can just offer them a payment plan or something like that, or a deposit, and then they can pay the rest once they get their salary. And as long as you are sure that you found the right objection, then typically it's pretty easy to handle. But in some cases, of course, there are some legitimate reason why they can't buy right now. But remember, that doesn't mean that they aren't going to buy later on. So you want to make sure that you leave the prospect very comfortable and that you're still on good terms with them so that they can come back to you once they are ready and the timing is right. Now, being good at sales is really cool, but if you can't even book any sales calls, then what does it even matter? So if you feel like you need more sales calls, then make sure you check out this video right here, because in that I show you exactly how I booked 40 plus sales calls a month in my coaching business, and that's all by running a very simple funnel. So click on that video right here and then I'll see you in there. Bye.